Despite those tough words, the provocation is expected to increase with a possible nuclear test in the coming days. And according to a U.S. official, the expectation of many more North Korean troops. David?
The administration watching this closely, just days until the election here in the U.S., of course. And Martha, while I have you tonight, another story breaking at this hour.
These Air Force Global Strike Command unarmed Minuteman III intercontinental ballistic missiles will take off from the Vandenberg test range. The purpose of these launches is to demonstrate the readiness of U.S. nuclear forces and provide confidence in the lethality and effectiveness of the nation's nuclear deterrent.
Minuteman III, an unarmed intercontinental ballistic missile. The missile is capable of delivering a nuclear warhead and is meant for nuclear deterrence.
Tonight, just hours after the U.S. condemned North Korea for sending troops to Russia to help against Ukraine, North Korea tonight test launching an intercontinental ballistic missile that could reach the U.S.
Breaking news coming out of Israel, where Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has dismissed his defense minister Yoav Gallant. Now, Gallant has been publicly critical of Netanyahu's management of the war on Gaza. He'd called for new goals to be set for Israel's war effort. Foreign Affairs Minister Israel Katz is set to replace him, according to the Prime Minister's office.
China says it has fired an intercontinental ballistic missile into the Pacific Ocean. Now, this is Beijing's first such test in over 40 years. Under Xi Jinping's presidency, China has bolstered its nuclear capabilities and revamped the People's Liberation Army's rocket force. The Pentagon estimated last year that China will roughly double its nuclear arsenal to about 1,000 warheads by 2030.
Another milestone in North Korea's missile development, setting a record with the launch of what South Korean and Japanese officials believe could be a new type of solid-fuel intercontinental ballistic missile. It reached a record-breaking altitude of 7,000 kilometers, traveling out into space before crashing into the sea to the west of the Japanese island of Hokkaido.
That is why Japan's defense ministry suspects it could possibly be a different missile than in the past.
Officials from the US and South Korea have condemned the launch, which came soon after a meeting between their defense ministers.
Tonight, a dangerous provocation. For the first time in nearly a year, North Korea launching an intercontinental ballistic missile capable of reaching deep into the U.S. that the Japanese say set a flight record. This video believed to show the test missile then splashing into the Sea of Japan. The launch came within hours of the U.S. condemning North Korea for aiding Russia in its war against Ukraine, with 8,000 North Korean troops now deployed in the frontline Russian province of Kursk, north of Ukraine's second-largest city, Kharkiv. U.S. officials meeting with South Korean counterparts in Washington, calling it a sign of Vladimir Putin's desperation.
Russia has been training DPRK soldiers in artillery, UAVs, basic infantry operations, including trench clearing, indicating that they fully intend to use these forces in frontline operations.
If these North Korean troops engage in combat or combat support operations against Ukraine, they would make themselves legitimate military targets.
Reports suggest Pyongyang has been significantly increasing its support for Moscow since President Vladimir Putin's summit earlier this year. South Korea fears Russia could be supplying advanced rocket and nuclear technology in return. The extent to which North Korea and Russia have been cooperating militarily was highlighted in a briefing this week by intelligence officials to South Korean lawmakers, when they also warned about this ICBM launch as well as a possible further nuclear test.
The possibility of a seventh nuclear test cannot be ruled out. Internal preparations at Punggye, where the North's current nuclear test site is located, appear to be almost finished.
It's thought such a test could be timed to coincide with the U.S. elections.
Meanwhile, Israeli forces have issued new evacuation orders in northern Gaza. At least 20 people were killed in overnight strikes, according to the Hamas-run health ministry, and many across the region believe the next U.S. president elected will have a huge impact on what happens next.
Now, Iran's supreme leader escalates his rhetoric, warning of a crushing response to the country's enemies, including the U.S., following Israel's missile strike on the country a week ago. For more on this, Stuart Livingstone-Wallace, Bloomberg's executive editor for Middle East, North Africa and Russia, joins us now. So Iran now have actually started to warn of a reprisal to the Israeli attacks from a week ago. How seriously should we be taking this?
Yeah, quite. And I think it's what you read into it. So if you think about the 24 hours, 48 hours after that attack from Israel, they were quite circumspect and quite restrained, shall we say, particularly Khamenei. And Khamenei's got a long history of being very cautious here. But something has happened over the last week, and I think that speaks to divisions within Iran about just how they should respond, just as we see divisions within Israel about how hard they should have gone on that attack. So you've both sides seem to have different camps pushing it very much in the hawkish direction.
Yeah, it's super interesting. Does a Harris or a Trump win matter for the direction of the ceasefire?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the short term, probably not. In the long term, absolutely, because Trump is very much in that camp that we saw the last couple of administrations where fundamentally they would like to get out of the Middle East. You know, they have bigger fish to fry elsewhere in the world and they can't do both. But at least for the short term, I don't think it would change very much on the ground.
Yeah.
The Boeing-made solid-fuel Minuteman III has been deployed as part of the United States nuclear arsenal since the 1970s. It has been the backbone of the U.S. land-based nuclear strategic force. The missile is the only land-based component of the U.S. nuclear triad and has near 100% testing reliability. U.S. currently has well over 400 Minuteman III missiles at various Air Force bases across Colorado, Montana, Nebraska, North Dakota, and Wyoming. It can travel more than 6,000 miles and reach speed of Mach 23. That's 23 times the speed of sound.
I'm here tonight because the government is again failing us. In the middle of a war, they are really firing a minister that is the only minister that we thought he cares. He cares for the people that are abducted in Gaza, and he cares for the soldiers, and he really cares for the country. Now